unconstitutional to give temporary legal status to hundreds of thousands of individuals who are here illegally. Wow, yeah, that doesn't count, as he did other things illegally. Take the Iran deal. He bypassed the treaty clause of the Constitution with the help of that clown Bob Corker, who, thank goodness, is no longer in the Senate. They turned the treaty clause upside down. They turned it into just another deal, and they made it incredibly difficult, in fact, impossible, to stop what the president was doing, selling out to Iran and handing billions and billions of dollars to them. They don't have a problem with that. They don't have a problem when he violates separation of powers. They don't have a problem when the Constitution's violated at all, unless they feel it's not to their benefit. Not to their benefit. So here's the president who says, look, you know, I could call a national emergency to build a wall if I want to. And he's not just saying this, shooting from the hip. He's obviously talked to White House counsel. They're probably going to talk to the Office of Legal Counsel, the Department of Justice. He's going to get the best minds, legal minds in the government to provide him with his with advice on this. Not Adam Schiff or Nancy Pelosi or Jake Tapper. Let's take a look. Go.
Have you considered using emergency powers to grant yourself authorities to build this wall without congressional
approval? All right, let's stop. He's not granting himself authorities to build the wall. It's a statute passed by Congress. It's a statute. Go.
And second,
yes,
on Mexico, you have.
Yes, I have. And I can do it if I want.
So you don't need congressional approval to build the wall?
No, we can use them. Absolutely. We can call a national emergency because of the security of our country. Absolutely. No, we can do it. I haven't done it. I may do it. I may do it. But we can call a national emergency and build it very quickly. And it's another way of doing it. But
let's stop here. And just so you know, because the press won't give you any context, this has actually been done by modern presidents since 1976, dozens of times. Not in this context, but in other contexts. Floods, hurricanes, cutting off funds to Iran, cutting off funds to Libya and so forth. So it's been done for a variety of reasons. It's been done several dozen times by prior presidents, Democrat and Republican. Go ahead.
If we can do it through a negotiated process, we're giving that a shot.
So is that a threat hanging over the Democrats?
I never threaten anybody. But I am allowed to do that, yes.
Second question.
Called a national emergency.
And it's amazing how little the press really knows about any of these things. It's all there on the internet. Let me give you an example. I did some research before this program. I pulled up from the Congressional Research Service their latest opinion on this from August 2007, and I read it. The Congressional, emphasis Congressional Research Service. And they explain the law there, and they explain some of the exceptions where a president can act. And it's available to anybody, including members of the media if they choose to read it, which they don't. But there was an excellent piece in USA Today the other day by William Cummings and John Fritz. So does the president have the authority to declare a national emergency and direct resources to the border? And so they ask, Trump can surely test whether he has the power to declare a national emergency for this purpose, said Kim Lane Schlepp. Oh, well. A professor at Princeton University Center for Human Values. The National Emergencies Act allows him to declare a state of emergency without approval from anyone else, but then he has to stay within congressionally delegated emergency powers after that. That's true. That's what the law says. The 1976 National Emergencies Act was passed in the post-Watergate, post-Vietnam era to create more structured procedures for the president's use of emergency powers. You understand this law was passed to constrain and constrict what a president can do. And he still has substantial authority because there were disparate laws in the past or presidents acted claiming constitutional authority to act as the executive. It goes all the way back to before Abraham Lincoln. Under that law, that is the 1976 law, the president can cite the specific emergency powers he is activating under existing statutes. According to the Congressional Research Service, there are hundreds of provisions of federal law delegating to the executive extraordinary authority in time of national emergency. That is a quote from the Congressional Research Service. Under the powers delegated by such statutes, again, this is from the 2007 report, President may, and I don't like some of this, by the way. I don't like some of this. Seize property, organize and control the means of production, seize commodities, assign military forces abroad. Listen to this one. institute martial law, seize and control all transportation and communication, regulate the operation of private enterprise, restrict travel in a variety of ways, control the lives of United States citizens. That is a quote from the Congressional Research Service. I have a problem with the vast majority of that. What do you say? But when it comes to a wall, that's not a private sector responsibility. Securing the country, securing the border, building barriers, walls, steel walls, double fences, whatever it is a uniquely federal government responsibility. And under our Constitution, overseeing that, implementing that, is a uniquely presidential responsibility. So if the President of the United States were to trigger this statute, if he had a basis for triggering the statute, it can be challenged in the courts and challenged by Congress. But in the first instance, if he triggers it, he's doing it as president and commander-in-chief with respect to maintaining our sovereignty. He's not seizing private property. He's not organizing and controlling the means of production. He's not seizing commodities. He's not instituting martial law. He's not seizing and controlling all transportation and communication, regulating the operation of private enterprise, restricting travel, controlling the lives of United States citizens, on and on and on. Yet they say under certain circumstances he can do any or all of that. So what happens in the era of Trump is the media, working with the Democrats, hype what Trump is up to. It's like he's the greatest threat to freedom of the press ever. No, he's not. We've had two sedition acts, one in 1789, one in 1917, one under John Adams and his party, one under Woodrow Wilson and his party, that closed down newspapers and imprisoned reporters. Donald Trump doesn't even think about doing that. We had, during the Civil War, I mean, it was an exceptional circumstance, a president of the United States that directed two New York newspapers to be shut down and their publishers and editors to be put in a federal prison. Now, that was quickly reversed, but still, over 200 newspapers were closed by the president's cabinet and generals, and Lincoln acted like he didn't know a whole lot about it, but he knew a lot about it. During the course of the Civil War, you can argue the improprietariness of it. That's fine. But I'm saying that happened. During Franklin Roosevelt's administration, he was threatening newspaper publishers and columnists all the time. He, like Woodrow Wilson, had a whole propaganda regime going on. And of course, we know about Barack Obama surveilling AP, surveilling Fox News and James Rosen. We know about them trying to imprison James Risen, an investigative reporter for the New York Times, and so forth. Trump's not done any of that either, yet you would think he's the Genghis Khan of the anti-freedom of the press presidents. He's not. He speaks. He calls out a news outlet. He calls out a reporter. He challenges them. He calls them fake news. My God, we've never seen anything like this. Oh, my God, we've never seen anything like this. Of course you have. It's just all phony. The president can declare an emergency, in this case, as an immigration emergency, under the Immigration and Nationalization Act. That's what they're saying right here. An immigration emergency is defined as, quote, an influx of aliens which either is of such magnitude or exhibits such other characteristics that effective administration of the immigration laws of the United States is beyond the existing capabilities of immigration authorities in the affected area and areas. Doesn't that seem to meet the conditions? It certainly does to me. We're being overwhelmed. Other factors that determine if an immigration emergency exists include the likelihood of continued growth, in the magnitude of the influx, an apparent connection between the influx and increase in criminal activity, high demands on law enforcement agencies, and other circumstances, I quote, that are defined by the Attorney General. You don't have to have all those conditions. One condition is enough. So I think the president would be within his statutory right to do this under the National Emergencies Act and the Immigration Act and Naturalization Act. And so this is not a constitutional question in my view. It's a matter of statutory interpretation. So circling back, so when this never-Trumper posts, here we have this great constitutionalist, he thinks the president can act unilaterally. Even one of my friends, a former prosecutor, was on fire. We don't run our government this way. Why don't you read the law? Why don't you look at our history? Why don't you understand this has been triggered before? This is very frustrating to me, and I'll mention it now, and then about 2 or 3 weeks from now, they'll all repeat what I've said, they'll echo what I've said, and then they'll tell you, remember when I said, and I told you you could use the emergency, when they never have. So you heard this here first.